Hey Yessi, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. We're just gonna wait for a couple more people to join our live and then we're gonna go ahead and get started. Hi Nadia, we're just waiting for some more people to join us. All right, so I'll just go ahead and get started since our guest has joined our live, and I'm going to add her soon so that we'll be doing this together. But my name is Anika Manzoor, for those of you that are coming new to our live series on Thursday called Activated Thursday. I'm the executive director of the Youth Activism Project. We're a nonprofit organization that helps young folks get involved with civic engagement, and we basically guide you and tell you how to make guide you in how to make issue or how to make advocacy on issues that you care about in your community. And so we have this series every Thursday to talk to a young activist or an adult ally who is doing this work in really incredible ways. And I'm so excited to introduce you all to Emanuelle Sippy. She is the student director of the Prichard Committee Student Voice Team based in Kentucky. And she's also the Education Justice Lead at the Future Coalition and the head of the art department at J Girls Magazine. She's interested in the intersections of art and activism and enjoys conversations about everything from exploring poetry to politics and exploring off-trail hiking. Emanuelle was a part of a movement recently to do this incredible survey that reached 12,000 students in Kentucky and actually reached students in every single county. So today we're going to talk about how the Prichard Committee Student Voice Team was able to do that and how you all can do similar things in your community as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add Emanuelle. Hi Luli, great to see you join us. Hi friend,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? So good to see you.
Me too. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today. So let me just say a little bit about how this is going to go. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'm hoping that the folks in the audience will also ask us some questions either in the comment section or the question box. So while I'm asking, please don't hesitate to ask your questions as well. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So just to start off, so you heard my bio for you. Is there anything else you want to add to that? And can you also talk a little bit about what the Prichard Committee Student Voice Team does?
Yeah, I have been involved in the Pressure Committee Student Voice Team, or SVT as we call it, since middle school. And so it's been, I think I've grown with the organization and through the organization, and that's been a really amazing opportunity, especially through meeting other organizations and people like YAP. So that's been really exciting. We really work to integrate students as partners in the work of improving schools and for education equity.
And do you know like the origins of the Student Voice Team and kind of why like the context in Kentucky in particular, like why an organization like yours is so important?
Yeah, so the Prichard Committee, our parent organization, has been around for about 36 years, and that's a citizen-led organization to do pretty much the same thing, to improve education and schools. But students weren't really involved in that work, and a group of students a couple of years ago recognized that we needed to be involved, not only as stakeholders of our education, because typically we're just seen as recipients of it, we actually have to craft it with educators. And so that's really why we were founded, to integrate students into the work that the Prichard Committee was already doing and further it in ways that really couldn't be done without students.
Awesome, yeah. And I want to ask also a little bit about you personally and how you said you got involved in middle school. Was that an opportunity that you were looking for, or did you kind of fall into? And I got asked this question because a lot of the young folks that we talk to they often say like, well, I don't think I can make a difference on these things. Like, I don't know how to get involved. So yeah, how did you get involved?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it was just through my family mostly. I like to say that for some people, this kind of work is an extracurricular, and in my family, it was just an expectation.
Mhm.
And I think I wouldn't want it any other way. That when I was growing up and my brother was more involved in this kind of thing, it didn't feel like my thing. And I had to just get to a place where I saw it that way. And so this through the work with SVT, I really started to feel that way. And I think it was helpful in like being a part of this thing that my family just did. And have it like be my own.
That's awesome. So what would you come from a family involved in advocacy and activism, and that they feel nervous maybe joining a group like yours?
Yeah, I would say that we really always are looking for more people. So even if you feel nervous, like it is the best thing when we get to bring new people in. And we can't, I think, kind of all social justice organizations really rely on people power more than anything else. And so I think not only the community that can be formed through doing this kind of work, but just knowing that without people, we really can't further these issues and work towards change. Just knowing that no matter how inexperienced you feel or how foreign this kind of thing might feel, you're wanted and needed to make this happen.
Yeah. So switching gears to talk more specifically about the survey that you guys just did. I mean, when I first heard the news, I was like, this is so incredible. Like 12,000 or 12,000 plus. Like, what's the exact number?
Yeah, almost 13,000.
That's insane. That
Yeah.
is absolutely insane. So please, like, I want to know, like, um, just kind of how did you guys go in that direction and just go through the entire process? I'm just so fascinated.
Yeah, so when schools first closed, we were thinking a lot about what we could do to support students and figure out where students needed that support and not just assume, okay, this is what we can do. We know that our group, about 100 students, make up our group, middle school through undergrads mostly. We know that we are not representative of the Kentucky student population or experience as much as we try to be. And we know that student voice is often tokenized. And so one of the things that we think a lot about is that this work, advocacy work, activism work is not just about holding up signs and protesting. It's not just about
No, you're back.
okay.
Yeah.
It's not just about like traditional kind of what we think of as protesting, but we like to think of students as research and policy partners in this work. And so one of the ways that we do that, I think, is really important is recognizing that when students are just asked to speak about their personal experience, or when students are just asked to speak for all students, those are both really problematic things. We want students to be seen, on panels and just in this work of improving schools, and creating a more just world broadly as experts. And so one of the ways that we do that is thinking about this research intergenerational partnership piece. And this idea, I think, came out of years of work. So this is a similar approach that we've done with college access and affordability work, with our school climate audits. It's just typically not been done in a we never would have expected that it would get this kind of response. In the past, it hasn't, and so I think that really speaks to the energy and desire in this moment for young people to be heard, and that they're wanting to engage in this.
So I have like a ton of questions. So you had mentioned like in the past so you've done surveys in the past and they haven't reached this level of like engagement, right? Like roughly how many people would respond to those surveys?
I don't have a good answer. Typically they've been done in really much smaller format. So it would be like a school focused one, or we would target a specific number of schools. But it's not reached anything close to this. We did a survey last year that was open form like this on sexual harassment in schools, and that got about a little over 1,000. So we were like, if we could get about 2,000, like that would be awesome. That was kind of, we weren't saying numbers out loud, but we were definitely not expecting this.
Right. So, would you say, I mean, I think clearly you said part of it was just the sheer need for students to express how they're feeling in the moment and kind of how they're hurting in the current situation. But would you also say it had to do with kind of like your outreach efforts, like listening to such a great response?
Sorry, you just cut out for a second.
I cut out.
Will you repeat that last bit?
Yeah, essentially, like, are there other factors other than the fact that like students really want to, you know, have their voices be heard on this? Like, did you guys just have like an amazing outreach strategy? Like, what are potential other factors?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did that I think helped this work so well was that we partnered with two other Kentucky youth organizations. So one being the Kentucky Student Council Association, which is like a bunch of student councils connected throughout the state, and another being the YMCA youth branch, and the KYA stuff. So like the Kuna Model UN type conferences, and those connections I think were also really essential, tapping into those networks, and thinking about that multifaceted approach. For example, the Kentucky Youth Council Association really enabled us to reach out to groups in more rural counties, where we typically have done some work but just are not embedded in the communities to the extent that they are. And so those partnerships were really essential.
That's amazing. I mean, that's not even a lot of organizations. There's just a couple of organizations that have a big reach, it sounds like, and that are really invested in the community.
Yeah, I think the fact that it was localized is important, and that we're focusing on this. Totally happy for it to be a model for other states, but thinking about it being focused here, I think was also helpful in getting that response rate.
Yeah, you mean just Kentucky, right? Like,
yeah,
statewide. Yeah. So what was the other question that I wanted to ask you? Oh, like,
sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you before.
Oh, no worries. So my question was, is there anything you can share about the survey results, or are you still kind of working on that?
Yeah, so because of the insane response rate, we are still working on disaggregating all of it. But I can share some preliminary trends for sure. Some of what's really striking to me, not surprising, but just important to know, is that students are reporting feeling less motivated, more anxious, reporting more feelings of depression and worthlessness. And I think we see this survey as really a tool to inform our action, and not just to get this data out there, but think about what are the implications of having this for policies and practices. And really our goal is to think about making schools work for all of us,
Right.
and creating environments where all students can learn. And so particularly in the midst of this crisis, I think knowing that students are struggling in specific ways is really helpful to think about what kind of policies and practices we're then advocating for. Another trend that we're seeing is thinking about the mental health issue. So particularly students who maybe were accessing services in school and now aren't, their schools haven't been able to pivot to providing those services offline. Students are we're seeing a trend of needing more support when it comes to their social and emotional health. And we're trying to think about how we might work with others to, you know, provide that and think through what that might look like. Thinking about the wraparound supports, things like food and, you know, the fact that students are essential workers in this moment. I mean, some of the questions that we ask are really just getting at what is your situation like right now? And then about things like what's been really challenging during this time and what's worked during this time. Is there anything, you know, that you would like to see remain? Whether one of the things that we noted in an open response question towards the end of the survey was that a lot of students pointed towards the need for empathy, both people being empathetic towards them and the fact that educators need more empathy. And so hopefully we're thinking that the relationships that may have been a little bit less transactional, a little bit less, okay, I give you my work, you give me a grade. I'm late, you give me a tardy. All of that kind of dehumanizing nature of part of what happens in our big schools where teachers are overworked and have too many students. We're hoping that part of maybe what remains in the midst of this and beyond is that relationship and empathy aspect.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just going to pause questions just for a second to just reiterate that today we're our Activate Thursday series. Our special guest is Emanuelle Sippy. She's the student director of the Prichard Committee Student Voice Team based out of Kentucky. So if you're just joining us, she's talking about this incredible survey that the Student Voice Team released throughout the state of Kentucky that got nearly 13,000 responses from students. So she was just kind of going into some of the results. And so I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but I would really love the audience to share any ideas that they might have or any questions or comments. We really want to have this be as interactive as possible. So one question that I have is, how do you make like data collection and do it? Because you mentioned like a lot of people think like activism is all like protests and all like the flashy stuff, and like I love data collection personally because I'm a huge dork, but like, yeah, how do you make that sexy? How do you make that something that young people should aspire to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we're still working on it, but two, I think making it clear that these kinds of metrics help to inform the change that we need. So I think one of the ways that our group learned that was through a campaign called Powerball Promise in 2014. The Student Voice team worked to get $14 million that were being diverted from lottery funds that were supposed to be going towards scholarships back into those funds for need-based scholarships through really just telling stories. And I think knowing that these kinds of policies are on the line is how we've done it. So just making it clear to other young people and working with them to say, this is going to enable us to reform the system. And if we don't have this data, it's going to be a lot harder to make our case. The other thing that I think has been powerful about it is the intergenerational component. And so thinking through what that looks like, we've worked with really amazing adult partners that I think have helped us recognize the power of this kind of work and not just the kind of traditional what you think of when you think of activism.
Got it. No, yeah, that's the intergenerational piece sounds like that could be a good way of like kind of supporting students to do this work and kind of providing some sort of accountability and motivation. Yeah, I mean, is this something that you feel like if you're totally new to activism, is this something that folks can replicate, or do they need to kind of build relationships first or kind of set up some other groundwork before trying to see if something like this happened in their community?
Yeah, we definitely love to work with especially young youth-led groups and community-based groups to think through this. So I think that's really where we want to prioritize scaling the survey. When we've done our climate audits in the past, again, which this process was modeled after, is really thinking about how once students are equipped with data and have gone through that process, they have so much more agency over the solutions. And so typically, these six-figure, companies are brought in to do this kind of work in a district, and rarely do educators, even educators, and then students, of course, aren't seeing the results of this study and this audit. And so when we do it, we think about this work as like shifting the power dynamic too. And so once that's done, really helping to again, like, inform the action and not just stop at, okay, now we have this data.
Right. I think that's all the questions that I have, really. I don't see any questions from the audience, so I'll just leave it to you, Emanuelle, if you want to say anything, any last words.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. On behalf of SVT, you can follow us at PCStuVoice _ and we'd love to continue collaborating and partnering, seeing a bunch of familiar faces, so that's fun, and really continue the work of improving schools, and really, really happy to have this opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah, no, I want to reiterate that as well. Please follow, so PCStudentVoice _ Can you say that again?
I'll type it in.
Yeah, that'd be great. So please follow the Student Voice team. They do incredible work. They've been doing this work for ages. And, as Emanuelle had said, like, they're open to, like, kind of sharing their process and collaborating. The other thing that I want to say is that the Youth Activism Project is also supporting students to get involved with COVID-19 advocacy, because I mean, what's happening in Kentucky is happening in like, the trends are, it's happening everywhere, right? So I mean, there are localized approaches, but like, there are also some like national trends as it relates to mental health, as it relates to the digital divide and all these things, right? So we're part of efforts to we're just in this beginning stages to, like, get students activated, so stay tuned for more announcements on that. Emanuelle, do you want to talk about more, like, the kind of the Student Voice national stuff or anything like that?
Yeah, happy to do that. So we also work with a national organization called Student Voice. We were founded around the same time, and so we've kind of developed together and have done a lot of work together. And one of what we're really doing right now, again, is just thinking through how we work towards education justice and equity. And so we'll be, like, launching some demands and principles in the next coming days that we'd love to collaborate with other youth-led education groups in doing. And that, Student Voice National was behind the test optional campaign that just really did some amazing work in encouraging institutions of higher ed to consider what students are going through in this moment, and that so much of the inequities we're seeing are pre-existing inequities just being exacerbated. And I think particularly with our work in the survey too, that's one thing we've noted. So we ask questions like measuring before and after to think about, okay, for a student who was worried about where their next meal was coming from before this crisis, they're likely still worrying. It's just probably worse.
It's probably worse. I mean, that's what I've been saying too, and I think I'm not alone in saying this. Just, like, this is an opportunity where I think, like, people who care about social justice in general are fighting. Like, they're like, okay, we cannot go to business as usual. Like, everything has just gotten worse. I feel like students have a particular voice to exercise here, because they're, like, hurt in ways that are unseen by other adults, and, like, students are dope. Like, I was a student activist once. Like, that's why I care so much about student activism. You guys have clearly shown, like, how incredible the work, the advocacy that students are capable of. Like, I feel like students are, like, the main kind of messengers here. Like, we need to invest in students. I see a lot of love, which I love. I love seeing that. Yeah, I'm glad so many people agree with that. So, like, this is the moment, y'all. So You Act Project is going to start sharing a lot of these resources, what we're doing, what Prichard Committee Student Voice Team is doing, what the National Student Voice folks are doing, and just like everyone else in between. We're gonna build a movement, y'all, and this is happening. And we're not going to business as usual after this crisis. So follow the Student Voice Team, follow You Act Project, follow the National Student Voice Organization, and see you next Thursday for our next Activate Thursday Live. Thanks so much, Emanuelle. So great to meet you. And thanks for putting that in there. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.